Out here today at a PPF Conservation Conversation with Jamie Patton from the UW Extension. Jamie, we're in a pit right now in an oat field. Can you kind of talk about what we're looking at here and what the farmers are going to learn?
You betcha. So when we get into this soil pit, what's really exciting to look at in a pit that's following a cover crop is the amount of root channels that have been created by that cover crop. And so we have not only radishes out here, so we can trace that deep taproot system of that radish going down into these heavy clay soils that we see here in Kewaunee County, but we can also see that beautiful fibrous root system of that oat crop. And so I'll be spending a lot of time tracing those root systems. I will also be talking about the level of compaction that we see in this field and why it's so important to have cover crops in a field such as this to help with that aggregate formation, to increase the amount of pore space, get water moving into the soil profile. The other thing I'm going to be talking to farmers today about is the lack of subsoil moisture this year. So we just didn't get the snowfall that we would normally get, and every pit I've been in so far this year has been dry. And so as I was talking to the farmer, that's the importance of a cover crop. If I have those long continuous root channels of this cover crop, it helps to get all of that moisture, or that little bit of moisture that we're getting, it helps to funnel it down into that soil profile so that we can store it for the next growing season.
What is the advantage of doing oats as a cover crop as opposed to crimson clover or turnips that have been discussed in some other places?
So cover crops are all about a goal. So what is the goal? If we were looking for a winter terminated, so a winter killed cover crop that's inexpensive, that we're familiar with, that screams oats all over the board. So oats are cheap. They produce a high amount of biomass, and you can probably see that behind me. We have a lot of great residue cover out here. It's helping to protect that soil from erosion. And again, it's also helping to build that organic matter over time. So choosing a cover crop is all about choosing a goal and tailoring that cover crop to meeting that goal. So if our goal was to grow nitrogen, oats wouldn't have been our option, but for this situation, this was a great cover crop, and we're going to talk about this beautiful biomass.
How important is it for farmers kind of trial and error with cover crops and kind of see what happens in that biomass that you're talking about?
It's very important. So always starting on a small scale. So when I talk to farmers, don't bet the bank on it. Don't go all 1,000+ acres. Start small and find a cover crop that works for you. So we're sitting up here in Kewaunee County. Obviously, it's cooler. Oftentimes, it's more moist. Our temperatures are quite different than that are in the central part of the state. So finding a cover crop that's specific to that particular area that does well in that climate, but also works well in that farmer's management system. So that's key. Cover crops need to be tailored to an individual management system. So if we were looking for something that we need to winter terminate, if the farmer doesn't have the capacity for that, either their own spray rig, having the co-op come out and do it, they just don't have the time to do that, if it doesn't work in with manures, whatever it may be, getting a cover crop that works within that system, that individual system, is very, very important.
If you can you kind of show us the biomass and the roots that you're going to be talking about?
Sure, you betcha. So when you look at this biomass, like I said, there was 100 pounds of oats that were planted last fall. And as you can see, we have tremendous amounts of biomass out here. We're going to be discussing today how we're going to come back and no-till into this, and the importance of equipment set up that we don't need to till this in. So many farmers get really anxious about seeing this much residue out here. As long as our equipment is set up and we're planting and we're planning for it, this is going to be no problem to plant into. When we look at our roots in the system, like I said, my trusty old soil knife, right? There is a tremendous amount of root at the soil surface. Now, as you can see, my friends also like that root system. So there's at least 2 worms sitting right here at the soil surface, right? And when we see this roots, again, beautiful roots coming down through that soil profile. You can see them tracing down right here. So even down deeper in the soil profile, you can see this old earthworm channel, and you can see these roots that I cut off here growing down into that heavy clay subsoil. And for many of our farmers in this area, this heavy clay subsoil is a real challenge, trying to get water and roots down in. So creating these channels and letting those biopores, letting the roots follow those biopores year after year, cash crop versus cover crop, keeping it sequential, is really important to helping to loosen up the tightness of the subsoil.
Last question. You said when you had dug this and you're starting to look, you could tell at one time this was conventionally tilled.
Sure.
Can you kind of see where the layer is?
Sure. So actually I'm going to move towards you, and it's actually, you can see whenever Mother Nature doesn't like straight lines, right? So she also has wavy lines, things tend to blend. But when you look at this soil pit, do you see this nice demarcation here? So above here, it's dark. Below here, So above here it's dark, below here it's lighter in color. You can see almost a straight line of that darkness across the soil pit. That's an indication that this pit was probably moorboard plowed at one point in time, because that moorboard plow creates that nice even line across. It mixes the organic matter consistently at the depth above that, and we see this very sharp boundary from what we call an A horizon, that dark layer on top, and that heavier clay subsoil. So that's an indication to me that this was conventionally managed in the past.